I don't buy my wife flowers. They're too expensive. I'm like, do you even know how much goes into it? It's like the biggest bang for your buck. Like, not just how beautiful they are, but the joy that it brings into your life and how important that is for your life. I mean, it is significantly reduces your stress. It's like plants and flowers. I'm on a committee that we're working on a national campaign over that as well. We need to talk more about that than we do how expensive things are, because this is the best pill you could give yourself.
Welcome to the Growth Mavericks podcast, where we know that entrepreneurship isn't just about strategy. It's about stamina. It's about disrupting your default and getting comfortable being uncomfortable so you don't burn out before you break through. I'm your host, Adam Callanan. Let's get to work. What happens when a 9-year-old Avon saleswoman grows up, joins the Peace Corps in Ecuador, and stumbles into one of the most complicated supply chains on the planet? You get Liza Rozer, founder and CEO of 50flowers.com. Liza built one of the first direct-to-consumer flower companies on the internet. We're talking 2000. Before Shopify, before WordPress, before any of the tools that we take for granted today. She bootstrapped the entire thing, never took a dime from investors, not even from her parents. And today, 50flowers.com ships from Ecuador, Colombia, Holland, Africa, New Zealand. It's a perishable product crossing borders, racing against the clock with all the chaos that comes with that. In this conversation, Liza and I get into what actually takes to build something that lasts for over 2 decades. We talk about saying yes to a 20,000 rose order 3 days before Valentine's Day, which was super early on in the company. Why being called La Gringa Loca was the best compliment she ever got. And what happens when your personal life falls apart in the same year your company loses money for the first and only time. This is Growth Mavericks. Let's get into it. Have you always been an entrepreneur?
Believe it or not, even from 9 years old.
You were the kid?
Uh-huh.
I was never that kid, and I'm always so impressed because I think I have one. I think my daughter is like this, where it's like the kid that's out selling rocks to the neighbors and like hustling the other kids to do things. You were one of those kids?
I was one at 9 years old. I sold Avon door to door. You know, the skin so soft.
Yeah.
I came home and I was like, I can make my own perfume. And I tried to make my own perfume.
How? It's just like crushed
Well,
flowers?
I grew up in Texas, and it gets really hot there. And the compressors that are outside, there's even more heat that comes out of them. So I picked all the flowers. I pressed them like honeysuckle to all the flowers I could find in the neighborhood. And I went out and I was like pressing them, trying to get them to like smell good. And then, of course, I took Avon perfume and put it in there. I still have that perfume today. Like, I have it. And I look at it often, just going, that is, just keep on going. Look at it. Keep on going.
How much of it did you sell?
I didn't sell any of it.
No.
No. I was 9 years old, but I sold Avon door to door. I went and knocked on the door to all the grandmothers in my area, on my street, my block, and everywhere. I went and I sold Avon door to door. My neighbor was one of the first. She was the secretary, because remember, this is like the 70s, and Avon was in the Meadows building in Dallas. And she was one of the first female people to work for Avon. And she sat there and she would tell me the stories. I'm like, tell me how Avon was. I was very curious too as a kid. That hasn't changed either. Yeah. Yeah.
There's such an amazing story to be told about someone that gets started that young, because getting like good at anything takes reps, right? It takes a certain number of reps, and you've had them for so much longer than most entrepreneurs.
But one thing I will say, and this is a difference, because I have a very good friend here in town. I'm an EO. I don't know if you know of EO, but it's something that it changed my life. And one of my former mates, he started young and had a family that like supported it, where I didn't get much support. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur until literally I joined EO about 9 years ago. And I already had 35 employees around the world. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Isn't that crazy?
You're running a company with 35 employees spread around the world, and you weren't familiar with entrepreneurship, like as a
I didn't know
construct?
it was like this entrepreneur organization. They asked me to join it. Should I join it?
Yeah.
to a friend of mine, Adam, literally, I was like, Heidi, do you think is it worth it? She's like, are you crazy, woman? Go do it. Do it. Isn't that funny?
That is. So how did you, from that age of 9, growing up in Texas, did you go to school for business or entrepreneur? Obviously not
No, I studied
entrepreneurship.
recreation park and tourism science. I went to school to become a pediatrician. In fact, in 4th grade, I remember sitting down going, yeah, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to drive a yellow car just like this to a used car salesman. And I'm not joking. Going, I'm going to save the world by, I'm going to save babies. I'm going to be in the medicine. My dad's in the medical field. And that's where that came from. My dad is also an entrepreneur as well. Speaker, author, audiologist. Every baby's tested for hearing because of my dad, Marion Downs and Barbara Bush. So it's, yeah, when you had your 2 babies and they tested them for hearing, that's thanks to Dr. Rozer. He did that.
So you had something of a path to follow. So you went through school and then decided against it. How did that change for you?
I went to school, and after my there's a common chord, I believe, with all of our entrepreneurs, is that we are definitely have some part of being ADHD or ADD. And I was ADHD, dyslexic, not diagnosed, and sitting through biology was really hard with that in my brain. It was really hard with that in my brain.
So it was school then that kind of
School
directed
within
you
itself.
in
And
this
then
way.
also realizing that I wasn't that passionate about it. It was fun being what is it? It was really fun being a candy striper and having that personal side with all the patients. This was back in the 80s, right? And low birth clinic at Parkland Hospital, that's where they took John F. Kennedy. And it's also where a lot of just all kinds of riffraff go. It's a public hospital. And I worked in the low birth clinic where I got to do everything. It was so much fun. But then realizing that it was going to be such a sacrifice and it was going to be so much of just memorization and regurgitation, that's where I got stuck. I'm a visionary. I don't want to be memorizing chemical compounds, and it got boring really fast.
We have a reasonably similar path. I started having dreams when I was like 6 about saving people on operating tables and spent a
Really?
lot of my childhood. I got a CNA when I was like 14 or 15 maybe. So I spent a bunch of time in changing bedpans and giving bed baths
Yeah.
to senior
Yeah.
citizens in high school, which was an incredible, humbling experience. And halfway through college, I got a crazy science degree, which I loved, but halfway through college kind of did the same. I was like, I don't want to be 35 with $500,000 in debt starting life. And that's how I ended up in entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
not as a 9-year-old selling Avon or rocks.
I did. I had a t-shirt business to where I made t-shirt. I did all kinds of fun things trying
That's-
to.
So after college, what did you do after college? You start a company or?
I went in the Peace Corps.
Okay.
And interesting enough, they put me in Peace Corps because I studied recreation park and tourism science. They put me in reforestry. And within 2 days, I was like, no, I don't want to plant trees. I want to teach people about business. So that was almost the first moment of there's some business inside. So I spent 2 years helping people better their products for export in Peace Corps.
In what country?
I was in Ecuador. Sorry, I didn't mention that. And there's a big fun story behind that. And once I got to Ecuador, I just fell in love with the country and the culture. And I knew there was something to do other than Peace Corps. And through my contacts there, I got a job working in the flower industry. And that's where I fell in love. And I was relentless to become the best and the expert in every single level of import-export of flowers. And I ran several different companies throughout a period of 3 years. And then I found the internet and said, I'm going to put in a business that we sell flowers direct from the farm to the consumer. That was the spark of it all.
Roughly speaking, what year is this?
1998, I started my first business, which is a B2B business called Farm Exports. today. It's still chugging along. I call it my ugly stepsister because we haven't done much with it yet. We're in the process right now of bringing her alive. She's literally been in the closet. She doesn't even have a good website right now. She's getting one very fast. And then in 2000 is when I brought 50 Flowers online direct to the consumer. And by 2003, we were chugging along.
What an epic period of time to join the internet. What did that take? Like building that first website, what was that process like?
Where do I start? I met an apple grower because I dabbled in fruit for a bit, who they had, he had an expert on his team that built websites. And I was like, great, let's bring in that person. And then the next thing you know, his brother was a designer out in Hollywood, a graphic designer. And I was like, look, I'm just going to fly these two guys down, put them up in a hotel, and we're just going to sit in a room and we're going to build a website, right? Sit in my office. Well, back then, and I'm sure it's this way now, like, no, it's not. There's nothing similar to this. You have your coder with your designer, and they're going like this because the designer wants it all big and beautiful, and the coder wants it this way. I mean, by the end of that 2 weeks, I don't think they will ever talk again. And it didn't matter how much aguardiente, which is like our fire water down in Ecuador that I brought in, or whatever I did. It was just this constant battle between the two. You go to the Wayback Machine and you look at the very first 50 Flowers, and it was this hideous purple with this hideous pink. And we had these roses that I remember looking at Old Navy going, okay, look at Old Navy. Like that is someone to like emulate, right? And we had our banner, and the rose would go up like this and then come down and go like this because that was cutting edge.
Yeah, dynamic motion in a website in 2003 or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, it was every day. Every day was something new,
Yeah. So all you out there listening right now that have built shops on Shopify that took 15 minutes to pop up.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. You could literally tell your AI agent right now to build you a website and have 4 versions of it up and live in 3.5 minutes. The world has changed. It used to be a lot harder.
It's so changing. Yeah. And it's phenomenal. And this is where I go, Adam, was it harder or did it really build the muscles?
Yeah. Important point. And that's where I was going with that. It's that going back to the repetitions.
Mm-hmm.
And the time and effort and the things that you had to go and put into it that you had to do yourself. They weren't largely outsourceable. With the exception, again, you were managing a coder and a designer with 2 entirely different personality types and goals. Yeah, I mean, going through that and building it like that, there's the fact that it's harder makes it more valuable. Like just full stop.
Yeah. And it's, we've talked about our children, and today you look and the math, like, do you have to learn how to divide, or do you have to learn these complicated? You don't.
But should you?
But you do.
Mm-hmm. I'm so hardcore about this stuff. I'm talking about math.
It's interesting. You're hardcore about it until you get to a point where you're like, it's great to have the muscle. There's no question about it. One thing that I've promised my team that I will never, ever do is I will never, ever learn to code. Because that's the one arena of the business that I'll keep myself out of. And it's limited me because I'll throw out, do this, it's easy. It's not that easy.
Yeah, never is.
It's never that easy. And as a visionary, we all think it's easy. But at the same time, it's also stopped me. I mean, it's allowed me to continue dreaming. It goes to that whole limited beliefs. You are who you think you are. And if you think you can't do it because you know how to do it, then you might stop yourself from being the next.
Yeah, there's so much value. And this is something that comes up fairly frequently, both here on the podcast as well as just in life. There's so much value in constraint.
Mhm.
and putting that constraint on yourself
Yes.
on purpose
On purpose.
creates a really unique opportunity.
And, Adam, something that I get the church giggles about is as an entrepreneur and owner of your own company, you get to do whatever you want whenever you want. And that freedom is what we all work for. And it can be a beautiful thing and it can be a detrimental habit. And the constraint part of it and learning that when you chase those shiny stars, what's the ripple effect through your whole team?
Yeah. The decisions and how we make them obviously have tremendous ripple
Mhm.
effects and impacts. And going back to even the math part with kids, I'm maniacal about math and science with my kid, not because I think they're actually going to need to know how to do it, but I do want them to know how to learn and have the curiosity and understand how to get from, A to Z and fill the space in between, which is what math and science teaches you. A business is like an engine. It needs fuel to run. For consumer brands and pretty much every company on the planet, that fuel is profit. Without it, growth stalls and everything feels harder than it should be. Pentane helps you fine-tune your business and advertising so you're running at peak performance, showing you exactly what's driving your margins, your cash flow, and pricing power. No more wasted time in spreadsheets or guessing what's working, waiting until you get your P&L next month to see if it's good or bad. Just the clarity and direction you need to grow faster, smarter, and with less stress. So if you're running a consumer brand, go to pentane.com and fuel your growth today.
It really does. I agree. How are you in high school in math and science?
That was good.
Yeah, same here. I went to the community college because my high school didn't have any more math.
Wow, that wasn't that good. I was I was good in that I was always very interested in it, so I spent time in it. And in
Mhm.
college, I mean, my degree was molecular and cellular biology, which
My
came with
gosh.
an insane amount of math and
Yeah.
physics and chemistry and obviously biology and the biological sciences and things. And that was awesome. I did that because I wanted to be a doctor. But what I took from that, having nothing to do with being a doctor, is what those disciplines teach
Exactly.
you is how to solve a problem. It's literally that's what organic chemistry is like you start at this chemical and you need to get to this chemical. You have to fill the stuff out in between. And there is tremendous value in that application in entrepreneurship. I think it is valuable
There
everywhere, but
is.
in like starting companies, that's what we do every single day. All of
Mhm.
it is about how do we get from A to Z in the most efficient way possible, minimize the risk,
Exactly.
maximize the upside. It's an equation.
It is. It is. It's an equation, and it's a formula too. It's not just you, it's everything around you from, your health. That's important. You gotta take care of yourself, which I speak for myself, for a while there, you can lose yourself because it's just one more day, and you're just grinding and grinding.
How did you get from I do wanna come back to the health thing, but I wanna do that a little bit later. We're gonna spend some time there because I also have had some deep experiences in that. And frankly, that's when companies fail, it's generally because of that. It's because the founders can't keep up or whatnot. How did you get from Ecuador trying, building business in and around the like Flower Pro to 50 Flowers? Was that just like was 50 Flowers the first website? The first like consumer site?
Yeah, it was one of the first
Okay.
direct-to-consumer sites direct from the farm. Yeah, absolutely. I trailblazed the way not only people shop for flowers, but also plan their wedding. It was such that time, I wish I would have kept a journal. That's one key thing I wish that people need to realize that your brain gets fuzzy on the details and keeping a journal of all of the big events that happen. You'll thank yourself later for doing that. And I don't it was it a lot of I get asked this question often, like, "How did you know? How did you do it?" You know what? I just put my blinders on, and I just knew that this was gonna be a success. It's kind of like AI today. I dove really deep into AI when it first came out. Couldn't sleep deep. Same with back in 2000. I just couldn't sleep. I was just relentless. It was work, definitely exercise, and back to work. It was fun building it, and it was fun being the first and I don't know if this is another common thread between us entrepreneurs, but when someone tells me no, I
It's so
love it.
motivating. Oh, it's
It's
incredible.
so motivating, right?
Oh yeah? Watch this.
Yeah,
That is like
watch
my
me.
default reply is like, really? Okay. Watch this.
Okay. Okay. And in the back of my head, I'm already figuring out how to
Yeah,
get
I
it
know.
done.
It's
My
already
poor
solved.
dad.
Yeah.
My poor dad. But when I go back and I think about that, everybody was telling me, "You are crazy, Gringa. You are crazy." In fact, it was, Gringa Loca nickname. And we went, it was, here are these growers that they're used to like putting 500 stems in a box. And I'm looking at them going, no, we're going to chop the box and then we're going to give it over to an overnight company and we're going to ship it direct to that'll never work. It'll never work. And a lot of that was the resistance to change, the resistance of being afraid of losing their part of the business. When in reality, the business is morphed and there's still business for everyone. You just can't do it the same way. You got to get a little bit more creative, get off your bottom and do things. That's why I started my business. It's a really old, antiquated system, flower distribution. And people just want to sell what they're used to instead of getting creative. And I got creative.
Were there times or maybe a specific time in that journey where you had the growers or the people controlling the infrastructure down there telling you, no, you can't, that won't work, crazy white lady, and you
Mhm.
were not entirely convinced?
Internally that it wouldn't work?
Yeah. Or were you always just like, there's no question, this will work?
It's interesting. I wish I could answer that truthfully and say, oh, yeah, no, I always believed it. I don't remember any moment going, this will never work by listening to other people. As we influence each other, as your parents told you, you are who your closest people you hang around with. That's why we try to keep our kids in a safe circle, right? And I've been really lucky to be surrounded by some incredible people who have always been cheerleaders for me and very quick to be able to step away when we're not. And a lot of that I can attribute to Peace Corps. We were not taught that being alone is okay. And we're not taught in our society that you need your alone time. Peace Corps taught me radically, you're alone. Here I was in the middle of the capital of indigenous people of Ecuador, Riobamba. I was the tallest person there. I stuck out like a sore thumb. Every time I walked anywhere, everyone knew I'd open my mouth and they'd laugh at me, literally laugh at me. Even though I'm there teaching them something, they're laughing at me. And I wasn't cognizant at that moment I wasn't insecure about it. It was just, this is the way it is, and we just got to get through it. And I also was not cognizant of what it was teaching me. It was teaching me that if I don't believe in myself and I don't protect myself and I don't surround myself with who I want to become, I will not become. And so going back to those days of people telling me, you're never going to make it, I remember one funny haha around this. We have Society of American Florists. It is everyone's a member if you're in the flower industry, and we're a speck of a community, but we also touch a lot of people's lives. And I was already built my name in the industry. Nobody knew who was behind 50 Flowers. And here I am in the middle of one of our seminars, and there's 500 people in the room. And these three florists are up on stage going, hey, who wants to tap into the do-it-yourself market and, really crush 50 flowers? And the people in the room who knew that I was behind it, they all turned around and looked at me. And I was like, holy shit, they just say this. And that was, it felt good because I didn't have any cheerleaders in the industry themselves. I had a lot of naysayers, which are still very dear friends of mine, and they still look at me in awe that it working. Because flowers are really perishable and they're complicated. You're crossing borders. You're getting a little bug on them. They're also timely. They're time sensitive. If they show up Saturday, the morning of your wedding, because there's an ice storm along the way, you can't use them. You just lost. We just ruined somebody's memories.
How do you control for that? I mean, you can't control for all of it, but how have you had to build process and structure to try to manage all of that chaos?
Yeah. And it's chaos. It's chaos. And that's where, I love it when a client will call up and they will say, well, will you price match this big box store? And it's like, no, we
No
won't.
way.
No, you know what? We don't sell bulk tampons and, lawnmowers. We sell flowers and we are the experts. And when the shit hits the fan, we will be there and we will help. And every single hiccup that we have along the way, I no longer sit through these meetings, but we have, and we actually call it like a bad claims review. And we will go through and we will look at all of our bad reviews, all of the reviews we look at and we're like, what happened? Was it our fault? Okay, what can we do to make it right? Do we need to go finish out a registry, which we've done many of the times? Do we need to remember to send flowers a year later? Like we have some creative ways that we can help help a little of the damage control. But when you're dealing with third parties and you're dealing with Mother Nature and you're not 100% reliant, we can put in some protective factors, make sure that you have a buffer day there for shipping because you just never know. You never know.
Yeah, I can't just like thinking through from a consumer side, the steps that have to be in place to get that product from. Is it still coming from Ecuador or are you into
We
other
ship
South American
from
countries?
South America, Ecuador, Colombia, Chile.
Okay.
I'm
So
trying
all
to think what
places that
we
are
did.
far.
And Holland, Africa, New Zealand. We ship from all over.
That is epic. Yeah, that must be quite an undertaking from a structure standpoint.
If I stop and I think about it, I would get scared.
But yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure if I looked at it, I would be scared. But the reality is that built over decades.
Yeah,
Right. I
decades.
mean, that didn't happen overnight. That's an iterative process of trial and error and mistakes and ups and downs that built over decades to create that.
And it's not just that. We have the tribal knowledge too.
Mm.
And now that we have AI, we can just feed it all in there and ask it a question and it answers us. We don't have to rely on a human being to be like, oh, what happens when this happens? And we can predict better too now. We've had some pretty crazy weather issues, in the past couple of years that are just, you never would have thought.
There's something really important and beautiful in the amount of time that has taken for that structure to develop. And I think younger entrepreneurs or people trying to be entrepreneurs that are coming and starting companies, particularly in the world of AI, don't appreciate the amount of time that it takes to develop something that truly works, that can have some durability to it.
It's interesting, Adam. What I'm reflecting on is our earlier conversation of you have to build the muscle, you have to do the science, you have to do the math. And, there are moments where we've got competitors coming up because anyone can build a Shopify website. Anyone can look like they're the experts in what they're doing. However, it takes that. It takes just the expertise because things can go wrong really fast. But if you trust somebody that has a history, that's where I always fall back on when the fear comes up of like, oh my gosh, can you believe, this VC company has jumped into the flower arena. I'll pick up the phone, I'll call the COO or the CEO and, I hang up and I'm like, yeah, good luck. It's not easy selling flowers on the internet. You just can't. You're not selling from, a storage place that they can sit there. This has to go fast, very fast. And you get one shot at it. And we've just been lucky. We know how to get the shot to the right end.
You say that you've been lucky. Would you say that the luck, where has the luck been? I generally think it happens with timing, things which you have no control over.
No,
where have you been lucky?
Sitting down on a plane next to the right person, the luck of having really great mentors around me who have told me, #never know, always say yes, and then backwards. Luck has been, I remember February 13th, and this was probably 2008. Okay. It was February 10th. I got a phone call. Cannot remember who it was. This is where I go back to document everything. In San Francisco, there was a record label that they were launching the record, and they wanted 20,000 roses, red roses, February 10th. Okay. And if you know anything about the whole rose world, we ramp up, we do 4 times what we normally do. There's limited space to transport flowers. There's limited, everything is like limited. But of course, you know what? I said yes. And I didn't even think about what I was risking then. Because, mind you, 50 flowers, I've never taken a penny of money from anybody, including my parents. And here I am committing to something that was like everything. It was like you could have bought a car for it, okay? But here I'm like, let's just do it. And once everything got into motion, and that night before these 20,000 roses got delivered in San Francisco, mind you, they're going from Bogota, Colombia, all the way over to San Francisco. It's not even Miami. It's not even Florida, right?
It's like as far as possible in the United States.
Oh my gosh. At least it wasn't Alaska, right?
Yeah, I guess that's
And until that, it didn't really hit until like 3:00 in the morning. I was like, what did you do? Like, you put everything on the line. It's like being the poker player and just going, take it all. I think it all worked out beautifully. And this client continued to be a client of ours until we lost track of it because they stopped using roses. But it's those moments. And I'd say the luck is maybe just being silly enough to say yes without letting the fear kick in.
A big part of that is also putting yourself and your business in the position to be able to say yes.
Yeah.
And that can take time. Like, it can take a lot of time for those things to happen. And again, going back to my previous comment about a lot of younger entrepreneurs and particularly early stage tech in and around AI, if we're not structured personally to be able to deal with the amount of time it can take for those things to start to happen, that's why companies fail, usually. I mean, you can run out of money. There's a number of reasons companies fail, but it's generally because the founders can't do it anymore. So when you look back at your experience, we were talking earlier, a thing I wanted to come back to is that like personal health and the taking care of yourself. How did can you give a story if you have one about where that kind of fell apart and what you did differently that changed your trajectory?
I grew up with parents that were very ahead of the game. They ran marathons, they ate well. So I come from a very, I'm lucky because I was blessed with that early on. And there were times where the work was, first off, creating a business in a third world developing country where you really are an anomaly. And I was swimming up a river every single day. I remember stories of one of my gals who's worked for me now 27 years. Her husband drove with me because I get flat tires all the time because the roads were so bumpy. And we would go in and we'd have these funny jokes of come with me. Let's just see what happens. And we'd sit down and we have these conversations with these farm owners. And they would look at him the entire time and talk to him and not me. And we would end on funny ha-has like, oh yeah, well, he doesn't sign the checks. I do. So can we do business? It was really, I make fun I have fun during these moments instead of taking them at heart, because that's when you get bitter.
Uh,
Yeah. And, there are moments where when you let your whole life get unbalanced, you can feel it physically, you can feel it mentally, you can feel it spiritually. And grasping onto that and knowing when that is the key to just staying balanced. And I can remember, when I wasn't feeling good, I go on these moments of I'll cut out alcohol for a year, or I'll cut out gluten for a year, or I'll cut out something because I know that I'm not feeling good in my gut. That first commitment of we're going to get up, we're going to exercise, we're going to do that. The first couple of weeks are heinous. But what I've also done is I've taken in my culture, in my business, we all encourage each other to work out. And that then we all just become better people. This last year, I've really committed to 6 a.m. workouts for an hour. If it's Orange Theory, if it's my hot yoga, there's something there because I know that when I get my exercise in, I'm balanced. And I've committed to it, and it has gone wildfire throughout my entire team. People are like, man, when I joined this company, my director of finance, he was like, when I joined this company, I was the most unhealthy I've ever been. And let me tell you, watching y'all, I'm gonna join it. I'm gonna start. And has completely twisted everything. And I faced a divorce, which was daunting for me. And it was something that it was in 2019. It was right before the world fell apart. It was the one and only year that 50 Flowers has lost money. And it was a lot of money. And I could just feel myself, like, all of that, like, that moment of, like, how am I gonna get through this? How am I gonna get through this? And I do have, I believe you can do all things through Christ who strengthened you. And I fell back on my faith, as well as I fell back on taking care of me, putting my oxygen mask on first. And what did that mean? I ran a marathon. For my 50th birthday, I asked for my divorce, that it happened on that day. And we went down to the courthouse and filed for divorce the way that we walked down the aisle. As well as that year, I ran a marathon to keep myself protected from all the stories that I could have created inside my own head. I worked them out running and eating right.
yeah, there's so much in there. That's great. I mean, it's not great that you had to go through the things in order for that to become, a big thing. It's not like being active has always been a part of your life, but the value from going and doing something really hard.
Yeah. And it was what is the hardest thing? When I was 33, I trained for the Paris Marathon, and 2 weeks before, I had a scuba accident that sent me to vertigo in bed for a month. So I missed that marathon. I mean, I studied French, you know. I was so ready to go. I'd run my 24-mile and then went down and just stupid. But it's okay because it happened. I got my marathon in. That's all that matters. I was 50, but I got it in.
Yeah, I mean, this is a concept or construct around doing really hard things is a huge part of, what Growth Mavericks is. It's part of the business and the entrepreneurship and all the things we do, but it's the other part of like, how can we build structure into our lives in order to create that kind of durability? And one of the best ways to do that is by going and doing hard things because it like rewires our brains
Yeah.
to like really rethink about what difficult means.
Yes. Because it's only as difficult as you tell yourself it is.
100%.
One of our core values is, we grow by doing hard things. And we repeat that all the time. Just this morning, I was on our social media call, L10. And yeah, we grow by doing hard things.
That's an epic motto. I love it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Awesome. How do you want people to find you, to find 50 Flowers? Where are you screaming and yelling these days?
We're screaming, yelling everywhere right now. Funny, Instagram, Facebook, you know. Trying to think where else. LinkedIn. I'm launching my book is coming out around Mother's Day. It's called The Magic of Flowers, and it talks about the journey of flowers from the laboratory all the way to your dinner table. And it's going to highlight the whole process, including the magicians along the way, because it takes a lot of hands to get those flowers to you. And, my platform is The Flower CEO, and you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
A huge thanks to our guests today. Don't forget, this is powered by Pentane Financial and Advertising Command Center for Consumer Brands. Stop what you're doing, put your phone down, walk away from the computer screen, go outside, get some air, do something hard, push your limits, get uncomfortable, become more durable and more resilient, create the stamina required to get through those entrepreneurial barriers, stay in the game for as long as you can, and we will see you next time.